Hi, my name's Jane Rickson. I work for the large pharma production team in the UK and Ireland. It's my pleasure to welcome everybody from more than 50 countries around the world. And I just wanted to set the scene for what you'll see today. It's going to be a mixture of applications, videos, and a demonstration, and a conversation between my colleagues in Barcelona, Terry and Maria, and the MD of one of our latex customers near London in the UK, Andy Wilson from Press On. And then we're going to have a demonstration. We're going to link to our Graphics Experience Centre in Barcelona, where Daniel Bellotti will give a quick overview of the Latex R series range. As I said, we're going to try and make it a mix of video and conversation. Any questions that people have, if they can put them in the Q&A, which is on the bottom of the screen, and we will come to those questions at the end. There will be some chances, any questions you can ask, we're going to answer them live, so we won't be answering them in the chat, we will be answering them live. Hopefully everybody will find it enjoyable and informative. And yeah, thanks very much for joining.
Okay. Andy, we have Andy here. Andy from our customer. Hello, Andy.
Morning.
Glad to have you here.
I'm Andy Wilson. I'm Managing Director at Press On, based in the southeast of England. And we have an R series printer, and we've been using latex technology for the last 12 years.
Thank you for being here with us. I'm Mireia Garcia. I'm the Worldwide R Series Product Manager. Have here Terry also.
Hello, my name's Terry Raghunath. I normally, when we're in the office, I sit very close to Mireia. I'm basically looking after anything that's application-based. So anything that comes out of the printer, that's what I'm interested in. And I'd like to also thank Andy very much for being with us today. Thanks so much for your time, Andy.
So between us three, we'll try to explain you a little bit how these printers can help your business, what is the unlimited possibilities that we have to grow with this technology. And first of all, and before giving the floor to Terry so that he explains us what are all these applications, let me put you a little bit in context, explaining you about its printers, technologies, and beginnings. So this printer was released on FESP 2 years ago with a great success. It was launched as the only solution or alternative, let's say, to the traditional UV printing in rigid, in digital. Okay, and since now we have around 1,000 units on the world already installed, working, creating, and we have then a lot of customers like Andy, which we have constant interactions, and we learn from them, we hear them, and from that we've been able also to confirm which are the strongest points of this printer and how and what is the technologies that help us succeed on this market, right? So just I'll try to pivot the explanation around these three concepts here. Keep them in mind, would be quality, white, and productivity. Okay. Let's go for more detail. So when we talk about quality, okay, in the sprinters, we need to talk inevitably about the HP latex inks, right? These latex inks, they give us the most vibrant colors on the market and the biggest gamut. We'll see more details later. So with this, obviously, we can create amazing campaigns with a lot of punchy colors. Since latex leaves a really thin layer over the material, we normally can still see the touch and feel of the material, feel this appearance. So if we are printing, for example, on wood or in brushed aluminum, so we can preserve the material. This gives us an extra, let's say, quality effect, no? Thanks to the thinning layer, the flexibility, the gamut that these inks have, so all these properties, makes us that we can print in many materials, both flexible, rigid materials, cellulosic, plastic-based. And this allows us two things. First of all, that we can have campaigns with different substrates, having the same color and the same quality. But at the same time, it allows us to only have one ink in the printer. This is a big difference towards some of the known technologies, because at the end, on the other ones, you need to choose if I want gamut, if I want elasticity. But with the latex ink, with one ink set, we have all the possibilities that we can have. So we all have the printer ready to print anything. And remember that latex inks, they are water-based inks. So they are odorless and they are green, okay? So in terms of quality, obviously latex is a winner, okay? Let's go to the white. Why the white is important? So white is a differentiator in this market as well. And thanks to the first time released white latex, we can have super white, a bright white, and an opaque white. So why is so white? This white, and it doesn't yellow with the time. So because it doesn't have the photo initiators that the UV ink has. Okay, they have some components that they react with the UV ink, and then this makes that this ink tends to yellow. This is constantly confirmed by our customers that they keep white and it's the whitest. So this, imagine, for the contrast and some effects is necessary. On the other hand, we know that the white pigment is normally super big. So being big to be able to have opacity, right? So if it's big, it tends to settle. So normally on all the traditional printers, we need to keep moving the ink constantly to be able to print whenever we want, or else do huge purges to have the system ready. So we've removed the barriers on these printers, and we've created some automatic recirculations inside the printer so that the white system is always up and ready to print, okay? You will see on the demo with Daniel later that we even have a system to remove the printheads while we are not using them, so that they are in constant movement and they are not clogged, and we don't waste any ink because it's on the carriage doing servicing or whatever. So it's a complete closed system that allows us to be very effective on the white printing. And then last but not least, the productivity I want to talk to you about. Why? Because at the end, we release the square meters, and this is what is important apart from the quality, right? So this is an hybrid printer with a belt system, meaning that we have an in and out workflow, and we can print both in rigid and flexible. So it is not a true flatbed, but an hybrid machine. Taking the advantage that our latex printer have been on the market many years, and that we have strong tested systems, we've incorporated here innovations like automatic vacuum, intelligent vacuum, that it's on or off depending on if it has material on top, so that the suction is the best always. And for example, we also have the advanced sensor that is well tested and well known from the other roll-to-roll printers. With this advanced sensor, we can control the perfect advance even at the highest velocities. Okay? This allows us, obviously, to print, for example, unattended during the night on flexible, and during the day printing the rigid printing. So taking the best of the printer and the most of the printer, let's say. And obviously, given the times that we are, we have a cloud-based solution, the Print OS, like an operating system that has many applications on it. Applications that goes from designing the layouts of the prints, from controlling the production, to diagnosing the printer and being able to remotely connect to HP support. This way we'll have the printer always up and running, or the most of the time, okay? So what we've seen a little bit, what are the innovations that we have on this printer, I'll pass it on to Terry so that he will explain us what are the things, amazing things that we can do with this printer. All yours, Terry.
Thank you, Mireia. So as adding to what you've already told us about the printer, of course, these are difficult times. These are strange times for all of us, I think. I think anyone on the call right now will feel identified or will identify themselves with the need to do an about face, to move direction, to add different things to your quiver, add different arrows to your quiver in terms of your business model. Your customers may be changing right now. You may be addressing customers that you haven't been addressing before. So this all means basically adapting to change, and adapting to change right now. We're actually getting this feedback quite often from customers, existing customers, is that the more versatile your machine or your technology is, or your setup is generally, the easier you're going to be able to adapt to these changes. We have signage specialists starting to make face masks. We're getting decoration specialists starting to make face masks or hand sanitizer units. We're getting interior decorators getting involved with social distancing preparations in public spaces like restaurants and retail and things like that. All of these things we'll address in the next few slides that you'll be seeing. But basically, it's all about preparing yourself and making sure that you have a machine or technology that's versatile, that can get you going in different directions, whether it's materials from rigids to roll to flexible materials, whether it's the type of prints you're doing, or any kind of change that may be thrown in your way. So in the next photo, what I would like to show you is basically a range of applications that could be. I tend to summarize the latex technology and the R series in this case, in particular, whenever we talk about special, bespoke, high value added, anything that needs that special twist, this machine is extra well positioned for these kind of things. Of course, it does many things, but I think that if you want to make an accent and make something look and make something pop specifically, this technology is very well positioned. You can see in these photos, you can see retail. As you know, in a variety of your countries right now, retail is very carefully starting to reopen. Retail is specifically challenged right now in finding a way to entice customers to come back in, whether it is to make them, most importantly at the moment, is making customers feel safe walking through a store. So signage is very important in stores once again. But also what we want to do is to make sure that customers buy. So advertising and visual communication is all the more important now. Outdoor, you have window graphics, which we'll talk about in a second as well. We have vehicle graphics as well, and also other new things which we'll come to in the next few slides. Most of these applications will go into a little bit more depth, and I'll actually be asking for Andy's help to help me give some concrete examples, because at the end of the day, he's doing it. I'm talking about it. He's doing it real time, day in, day out, right? So before that, let me show you a video of, in this case, it's a retail kind of environment as well. It's an ice cream parlor. For those of you who are in the northern hemisphere, you'll be going into a warmer weather now. You'll see how our technology and the applications that the technology will allow you to make, how that is adapted to an ice cream parlor, just to give a bit more detail onto what we're talking about here. Roll the video, please. Great. So let's start with retail. When we're talking about retail, we could be talking about many different applications, many different materials. But typically, I guess, when we talk about panels within retail, we're talking about cardboard, with a variety of different kinds of cardboard, foam boards of different varieties, thicknesses, etc., and of course PVC foam. All these kind of rigid panel like communication mediums. So what's important to remember here in retail is, of course, we're dealing with brands, brands and the brand's colors and identity, basically graphic identity. So if we want to hit those colors consistently and accurately, basically having a machine like the R series with a gamut that's as broad as, I think, as we cover. In fact, in the next slide you'll see it. It covers about 77% of all the available Pantones, for example. Of course, we're talking about eco-friendly. This will come up in every application I mentioned. Water-based inks, no smells, no emissions, which means for interiors, this is important. You can install as soon as you finish printing, and it's safe, whether it's a retail shop or whether it's a school, whether it's a hospital, etc. And of course, versatile inks. So you can basically use the same ink with the same color qualities on one material and a very different material. It'll all look the same. Andy, you mentioned something else to me when we were talking yesterday. You do a lot of branding as well. I mean, you do a lot of communication for brands. Can you tell us a little bit what you find most important in these kind of environments like retail?
Yeah, we've been talking recently about the high-end luxury brands that we work with. Mm-hmm. If anyone wants to take time to have a look through our website, you'll see there's some leading luxury brands there, and their demands are very high for color management. Their brand is important to them, their colors are important to them, the photography that they use is extremely high end and it needs to be reproduced to their high standards. The great thing about latex ink, particularly as I mentioned earlier, we have a number of different machines, but the R series gives us the versatility to maintain that color continuity across many different mediums. So we could be using that R series for printing Foamex boards in the morning. We could be doing for the same client with the same color demands, window graphics later on that morning. We could be doing vehicle wraps that are required. Again, the R series will print all the relevant types of media that are applicable to that. But importantly, because we're using one machine with one operator, we can maintain a high standard of color continuity across those different platforms. And that although the client is not exposed to that technology in terms of, oh look, this is what we can do, it's reassuring to know that we can achieve it for them, and they don't need to know how much effort we go to do that. So yeah, as you commented earlier in the earlier slides, the versatility of this machine, particularly, you know, and the ability, particularly in the current climate, to have one operator running it. And in some instances, no operator running it when it's running unattended, has been really beneficial to us, not only financially, but also when we have to maintain standards of social distancing, for example. So yeah, it's been a great benefit to us.
No, you mentioned yesterday also that we of course, us being HP, we tend to always focus on the qualities of the machine in terms of color and efficiency, et cetera, et cetera. But you actually mentioned another one yesterday, which is that the jobs that you get don't come in typically when you want them to come in. So you get the job and you have to move quickly, right? So that's this versatility once again comes in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, it's the business that we are in is we refer to it as on demand. Customers have become accustomed to being able to make a decision on a Friday afternoon and the application implemented on Saturday morning. And we very much we've been able to build a business on offering that, and the technology that we've invested in being latex. I mean, we have got UV as well, but that we're seeing that as something that we're phasing out now. But the latex technology, it meets that on-demand criteria that the customers need and that we need, you know, in order to compete, you know, against we compete with other companies, and we need to have that confidence that machinery will outperform the competition.
Definitely. Now we talked about speed, we talk about versatility, we talk about high image quality, but in the next photo you'll see a very different application, which some of you guys are doing as well, which is basically outdoor signage, which is not necessarily designed or purposed to be there for months and months to come. So we're thinking about the real estate market, which by the way is in, I wouldn't say turmoil, depending on where you're looking. There's an upsurge in people looking for bigger living conditions, bigger properties, and there's some movement on the market here. So you'll see these signs going up more and more. We're also looking at other governments now starting to incentivize things like buying new cars. We basically what we want to do is to stimulate the economy coming back in. So this kind of signage comes back in, and this is typically the fluted polypropylene kind of applications, which is simple. The print quality doesn't necessarily have to be extra high. It needs to be good. And typically are these things you print fast. So we can do that with this machine as well. We can get a very, very good quality at 3-pass, 4-pass, where you're not getting banding, for example, thanks to the belt system. The flexible inks comes in here as well, because you're bending very often. Sometimes these signs are bent or cut into shape, so you don't get the typical cracking or the ink coming off in the edges. It is still eco-friendly. We're not talking indoor now, but eco-friendly inks are always nice to have. Do you do this kind of application a lot as well, Andy? Or
in terms of eco-friendly, I mean, yeah, there's a couple of points you picked up on there. The finishing on the R series flatbed is a lot. It's a lot easier, particularly when we're routing or cutting through the bleed. So you don't get, like as you mentioned on the phone, you mentioned just then during the presentation, you don't get the chipping. The ink is so thin we can knife cut through it on rigid materials like Foamex and Corex, and we can also route ACM right through the ink, and there's no chipping or any damage to the print. In terms of the eco element, we refer to that here as reducing our environmental impact. So obviously we moved away from solvent some years ago, getting on for a decade ago now, and we're seeing UV as going in that direction. We are offering our clients lower environmental impact products often can be, you know, an alternative to what they're already getting. It might be more expensive, but it's definitely particularly as policies are changing within the marketplace as to what those demands might be. So we've been able to offer better eco-friendly alternatives to what we're doing with the latex ink. And the partners that we're working with for recycling, so we work with a number of partners for recycling, they prefer the water-based ink that is in the latex printers as opposed to the UV or solvent ink. That can affect how much of the product can be recycled at end of life, which is very important.
Okay, we'll come back to that with another material we're talking about later on. But let me go to the next one, which is we've gone from high print quality to not necessarily very high print quality to another one, which is where high print quality is very important, which is window graphics. And you were telling me the other day that this is definitely, you see an upsurge of this kind of application. So here we're talking colors that pop. They're on a window. They need to hit you in the face. This is where white really comes into the picture, doesn't it?
Yeah, the white ink. There's no doubt about it. The white ink on the R series is very impressive. We evaluated a number of machines from a number of leading brands when we were going through the decision process of which machine to invest in. We've had the machine for 12 months now, just so everybody knows. And the white ink there's no doubt about it. It's probably, I would say it's the best in the marketplace at the moment. The ink density is great, and it really does make, it's high resolution as well. So we've been doing a lot of, in the image that you're showing on the presentation at the moment, they're retail windows, but we're doing an awful lot of architectural work now in offices and window manifestations. Just graduated white tone has been a real door opener for us, because UV ink has always traditionally, or the machine that we currently run, has struggled with that. And you tend to get, as you described earlier, an amount of banding on graduated white halftones. It looks, we've had some real great, beautiful results and some real positive feedback from customers on just the white ink alone. But again, Terry, you're right. The colour gamut that's offered with the latex inks is, in my opinion, is certainly more superior to the UV machine that we had in existence. But yeah, we're getting some real positive feedback from clients that we've been doing work for a number of years now, and since they've seen the results that we're getting on the R series, they've been very pleased with those results, particularly on the polyester films that we're using that are optically clear.
Okay.
The results that we get with R series latex inks are really, really good.
So in the next thing, I've just summarized three points. Again, as I do after every application, and you'll see that the first point is obviously eco-friendly again. It basically can't go unmentioned, because it's one of those things we tend to forget, but it's just there. Water-based inks, the image quality, which is very high, a versatile ink set, which means you can of course print a board one moment and print on a flexible media the next. So it's basically this true hybrid type of machine that you can do. By the way, and it's mentioned twice already before, but it's something that's it's quite obvious, or it seems quite obvious, but it's with it being hybrid, you can get the attended printing during the day and unattended during the night, which is something that's an added bonus with this machine as well. In the next slide, we're going to talk about a very different kind of application, and here I would call them, I don't know if in English it's a proper use of the word, but to be noble materials. I call them noble materials because they tend to be high grade or very expensive, or in some cases even completely unavailable at the moment, like for example acrylics. So for those of you looking for acrylics at the moment and you're not living in China, you're looking at delivery times of 10 weeks or longer. But these are materials that are so expensive or difficult to get that whatever you put on it has got to justify buying the panels in the first place. So we're talking about ACP, so aluminium boards, aluminium panels or composites, as it's called, ACP, ACM. Some of you refer to it as, or acrylics. And you do a lot of aluminium, don't you?
We do a lot of aluminium composite material. Yeah, we do. We have a lot of customers in the construction industry, and we do a lot of advertising hoardings for them, internal signage, etc. And aluminium composite material, it's a very robust product that we've been using for many years. Traditionally, we've either printed using our existing latex printers and mounted to that. We've used a UV printer to print directly, and we've now moved the direct substrate printing into the R series category, and we've been very pleased with the results actually, and we've been working with a number of partners to develop to find an ideal product. So I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but we've got real great scratch resistance direct to substrate, to the point where we're no longer having to laminate the panels before they leave.
Okay.
So yeah, we've had some good results with that.
Oh, good to hear. And then the next slide I've summarized again, and one point that I'd like to lift out of this, which Mireia mentioned earlier as well. Andy, I don't know if when you're printing on aluminium, would you print on gloss, or would you use more brushed aluminium, or do you use a combination of both?
Depends. I mean, the brushed. Interesting you say the brushed aluminium. There are different textures available with aluminium composite. You can get chrome, you can get brushed effects. A lot of the sheets come white one side, gloss, and matte the other side. Okay. We generally, for construction silings, use the gloss side, but we can use either. But again, particularly on the brushed aluminium, with the white ink underneath, you get some really good creative results.
Yeah. No, I mentioned it because Mireia mentioned also, and we see this in other applications which have nothing to do with aluminium, like wallpapers that have texture. The inks basically lay over the texture, and yeah.
Interesting as well. If you're looking at again using your brushed aluminium, the beauty of the latex ink is it's very thin, and it's without the white backup, it's quite translucent, so you get great metallic effect. If you're using metallic-based materials, so if you're printing to a mirror silver or a brush silver, the ink looks metallic. So we get really good creative results from that.
Oh, great. Actually, since we're talking about innovation and new materials, etc., let me segue into Mireia's next point, which is all about innovation, which is a continuum. As we speak, we launched a product two years ago, but it's continually being upgraded and improved. Mireia, please.
Okay, yeah. So exactly, we've seen what are these printers, what are the innovations that they bring, and what is the amazing quality and effects that we can get and the high value jobs. But it doesn't stop here, as you were saying, right? So I want to talk to you about this relation between the customer and HP. I think seeing Andy here also is a demonstration of that, right? Having these conversations, having at the end the customer at the center of our developments, right? Sorry, here now. So the point I want to highlight here, let's say, is that when you buy a printer, an HP printer, you are not only buying the hardware, but you are buying then a number or a continuous innovations that will be included on your printer and will be based on your needs. So at the end, when we release these products, the design team is not going away, but it's just staying next to the customers that are buying these printers and learning from them, asking how to improve the printer, how to improve the usability, how to make it better with more opportunities so that the customers at the end make more money. And normally this goes on the direction of enabling new medias, as Andy was introducing, and we will see later, on making the printer even faster, but understanding how the customers, they use that and always fine-tuning those processes. And enabling, as Terry will show us later, new business opportunities, because we try to put all the dots together, so for the customers it will be easier to develop certain application and then make money from that, right? So before going and showing you some examples of these news or these innovations that we bring, I want to show you a video of another customer that is explaining what he got when he bought the printer and how he sees this relation with HP. So can we go with the video? Perfect.
My name is Reza Dukyan. I live in Kuwait. I established my company in 2005, Paul and John Rodies. We've been in this business for 22 years and we love printing business. When you print something on a material and you touch it and you feel it and you see it, that's the exact feeling that you want to be in. That's life. I found HP as the most powerful machine among all the brands that are available. The R series is doing what the UV series didn't do. We could print on glass, printing on acrylics, print on wood. When we print on magnets on the latex, it's amazing. Very sharp, very high resolution. I choose the R2000 Plus because latex technology has pure and solid white. The color comes punchy. It's amazing. When you want to print on glass, you need that white base in order to push the color and to make it more juicy. When we bought HP R2000, we add 20% of the market share into our business. You know, it's amazing when you see your work outside, you see the building wraps, it hits your eyes sharp and it's exciting. The market is improving and everything in the world is going eco-friendly. So when you use UV before, it affects the operator itself. But the latex is water-based. When the heater comes on the ink, it dries. I like the way it works. HP, they have a very powerful after-sale service that you feel that this machine will never stop. This beast works 24 hours, 7 days in a week. It's been 8 months, never stopped. That's it. That's the machine that we need. I'm really excited about the future. When you have a kind of machine like this, it gives your client more options to use every kind of applications that they need. This is what makes the future of this machine brighter. Paul & John Rudy's and HP is a family. It's like a marriage. Me and HP is the same.
So I like how he put it, like it's a marriage, right? So in fact, continuing with his metaphor of the marriage, I want to show you what are the second anniversary presents that we've got for our customers. Before going to that, I want to remind you that you can keep posting your questions, on the Q&A button, and we will answer them live later, okay, during the demo or after the demo, so that you can be listing them there, okay? So, like a little bit, I wanted to show you a little bit of the overview of the news that we have. Let me now. First of all, want to show you what are the options that we have to buy this machine, let's say. And one of the news this spring is that we have enabled an entry point machine. Like we took the 1.6 printer that has the flexible, wide capabilities, rigid, and we enabled the one without the flexible, so that we can, these smaller accounts that they want to enter in this business, they can reach it more easily. Okay, so we have the 1.6 machine, 1.6 machine with the flexible, and then the 2.5 meter machine with flexible, wide, and everything there, okay? The 2.5 would be useful for the 4x8 feet boards, for example, okay? So continuing, what are the news that we have on the IPS? So this is more examples of working with customers. So we have been collecting feedback from the customer, with asking them, and most importantly, on the interface where the operator works with the machine, we have even a button where they can post all their comments. For example, they are working and preparing a job and they find that there are too many clicks, or it's complicated to drag and drop an image or whatever. So they just tell us their opinion on that. And then we collect all the feedback and see what is more common in some customers, no? And we are developing then these improvements for making the operators and businesses lives better, let's say, right? So some examples are working on a more agile interface, less interactions on the interface. And another thing that we've heard constantly and that customers tell it's really important is to make the printer more efficient. Let's say less workflows, less stops. So we've worked on this direction as well, and we've enabled non-stop printing with any material, and even reduce the distance between boards, because some of the customers were saying, oh, can we reduce that so that we can have more boards? Yes, so we did it. And last but not least, some customers, they ask us sometimes more options. For example, like I want to even print with less density, but faster, right? So then we created additional print modes, for example. Finally, as Andy was here commenting, and I want him to talk a little bit because he's been key on this development. So we've been working to enable additional brands, additional boards that they work perfectly with the latex. So as a context here, this is a normal practice on this market or industry technologies. When there is a new technology, some of them media brands, they work with the hardware developers to create more better working boards, for example. And then we created super durable and super image quality, high image quality boards to print on ACM, for example. So Andy here, if you want to comment, because he's been working completely since the beginning with multi-panel to have this with us. So he's been key on this development.
Yeah, we've one of the good things we've experienced on all levels of working with HP on the latex inks, and again enjoyed it with the R series. Obviously, the R series, it's new technology, and products are being developed all the time to benefit from the technology that exists with the R series. And we were approached by HP to ask if we wanted to do some development work with Multi-Panel UK on ACM boards for them. It was particularly interesting to us because, again, we touched on it earlier. We've now got access to a board that we can print and transport and install that's very robust, so robust in fact that we're not needing to laminate it. We've tested it, the very stringent test of cutting it into pieces and kicking it around the factory and see if it scratches, worked a treat, and we've been able to work with Multi-Panel on that, which has been great. One of the offshoots of that as well, the introduction enabled us to find a situation with Multi-Panel where we can do closed loop recycling. So what's beautiful about this new product is we can print it using the water-based inks, so there's no PVC laminate or no PVC application. We can install it, and then at the end of life, we can remove it, give it back to Multi-Panel, where they can recycle it back into aluminium composite panels again. That's real groundbreaking, and that opportunity exists through that introduction from HP. So we're really pleased about that.
Okay, we are also, Andy, to have customers like you that helps us and helps us develop medias and better printer and better solutions for you. Thanks on that. So I'll pass it to Terry so that he can explain us the latest business opportunity that we have, right, Terry?
That's right. So we're always looking at more surfaces to cover with ink, of course, whether it is a wall or whether it is a box. When we actually first started talking about packaging and using the word packaging and the R series in the same breath, people were kind of puzzled because the machine is not seen as an industrial packaging machine, and of course it isn't. If you look at wanting to make runs of 2,000 boxes per minute or per hour, this machine is actually much more well positioned in the bespoke or the what I call micro short run packaging. Now, interestingly enough, when you talk, the more you talk about to customers, the more you talk to brands, you see a trend developing in just about any print application, which is short runs. Why is this? This is because of customization. This is because of an incredible increase in e-commerce, for example. So anything that has to be packed into a box and has to go to a bespoke or specific kind of situation, whether it's an event pre-COVID or maybe soon enough after COVID event where we have events again, where these special event boxes are made, or whether it's a packaging of a product. Machines that are versatile enough to be able to say yes to 5 boxes or 15 boxes or 20 boxes up to maybe 50 This machine is great for that. And as you can see in the photo there, it's a little small, but we're talking about, again, many, many different kinds of materials. So if you want to make a box that consists of uh, um, uh, um, uh, cardboard, compressed cardboard, or corrugated, or folding carton, or maybe even including other things. So you want to make a box or a point of sale piece of material. You can include things like PETs, transparent media. We even got some examples of wood, of ACP as well. So you have the ability to do all of these different kinds of applications with the same printer, with the same ink set. Take into account when you talk about marketing material or packaging, you're looking at folding. Basically, you're looking at a medium that's actually folded into place, whether it is because of a kiss cut or folded directly. You're looking at this quality of this flexible ink again. So it's an ink that doesn't crack or doesn't chip. The quality of the print is very high, and of course we're dealing with odorless inks as well, which when you receive a box that doesn't smell, basically is an added bonus as well. We have a video in the next slide, which will show you a little bit what I mean in a cartoon. Watching a cartoon is probably better than listening to me. Let's roll the video.
I love the natural world. It inspires all the accessories I make. And I wanted a way to tell that story to retailers.
Hello.
Hi, I need to print a couple of high-quality boxes. Can you do that?
Well, yes, but the minimum order is more than a couple.
Oh, that's what happened again and again, until I found Peter.
I've always stuck to making signage and point-of-sale materials, but then I got an HP Latex R series printer, and I realized I could do so much more. So when Nia said,
I need a couple of great-looking boxes to present my products to stores,
I said, no problem. We printed the outer box deep black with vivid red and bright white ink for the accents. HP Latex ink is really flexible, so it all folded perfectly without cracking.
the quality was amazing. I couldn't believe it was cardboard.
Inside was a second box with an acrylic viewing window with sharp text and images printed on both sides. The last box was printed gold with a metallic effect that's really simple to do with standard HP Latex ink.
Then came my favorite part.
The shelf display unit.
It displays my accessories perfectly. And when I finish my pitch, the store owner nearly always keeps it for their shop.
That explains why you've ordered so many more. The HP Latex R series. Big on quality, even on the smallest jobs.
Last slide, guys. We need to go to the demo center. One last application here is which is thermoforming. Flexible inks means deep draws. Basically means you can stretch the material very, very deep, beyond 10 centimeters, basically, which will keep the colors vibrant without cracking. More about this, if you need to find out, please let us know and we'll get back in touch with you or in the questions after the demo. But let's go to the demo as Daniel's already waiting for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the GEC here in Barcelona. My name's Daniel, and I'll be showing you around the HP Latex R2000. I've just launched the print, as you probably have seen. It's going to be two corrugated cardboard sheets, one after another. Both are going to be 2.4 wide by 1.6 meters wide. And they're going to be running at around about 4 pass with 90% of ink, and that's around about 62 meters squared. So while that's warming up and on its route, I'm going to start to show you the 3 consumables that we have in this R2000 printer. The first one being the inks. So I'm just going to go to the other side of the printer. So here we have the R2000 inks. For all of you that may be familiar with the latex set of inks that we have on our roll-to-roll machines, you may notice that there's a few more cartridges. So we have the standard 6 colors which is the cyan, magenta, yellow, black, plus the two light colors, the light cyan and light magenta, to gain those skin tones and pastels to give a nice high round color gamut. And something that's always been apparent with latex inks is the optimizer. Now, the optimizer is the transparent solution that we have that goes down before the ink, which allows adhesion to many different substrates, from textiles to vinyls to rigid media such as wood and metals. Okay, but we have two extra inks, and now these two are different inks that we have from our roll-to-roll media machines. And the first one is basically our overcoat. Now, our overcoat is a component that is apparent in the earlier generation inks, which is an anti-scratch agent. We've separated it from the ink now, so you can have more flexibility of the amount that you put on. Now, this is kind of a protective layer that goes on after the optimizer and the ink has gone down to allow it to have that anti-scratch straight after printing and curing. In the case of maybe you want to over laminate with a liquid lamination or a roll lamination afterwards, then you can choose to remove this and not have that print at all, so you save the money on that ink. And last but by no means least, we have our first latex white ink here. You may notice that it is slightly different. There are two tubes that go into the cartridge here. Basically inside there are two bags. One is full and one is empty, and what we're actually doing is we're recirculating the ink all the way to our print heads and then back to the ink cartridge. So without us doing anything, we're continuously moving that ink back and forward to our print heads to make sure we have that circulation apparent all the time. Okay, behind the scene over here, we actually have some intermediate tanks as well, 775 milliliter tanks, which allow the ink to pass to those tanks and then directly to the print heads, which allows me basically to, as you may or may not see at the moment, we're printing right now, it allows me to remove the ink cartridges while we're printing. So it doesn't restrict me in that sense, because we have those intermediate tanks behind there. They're allowing the ink to pass to those before going to the print heads. That is great, so I can have the flexibility of continuously printing while changing my inks if I need to. Okay, so let's move on to the second consumable out of the three, and that's our print head. So I'm just going to move back over to the other monitor over there. So our thermal inkjet print heads by HP, they are native 1200 DPIs on them, and slightly different technology in this printer than our third generation again, because we have the white. We want to keep the movement of the inks apparent even inside the print heads. So inside of the print heads themselves, we actually have a micro circulation pump that is inside them that is basically moving the ink while the print heads are not doing anything, they're stationary. Later on I'll show you that we do have a circulation tank that we do put the white into when we're not going to be printing with white over an extended period of time. So that's our second consumable, which is our thermal inkjet print heads. Okay. The third consumable is our maintenance. Now, our maintenance consists of three different parts. The first part that I can show you, which is inside of this door just behind the IPS monitor over here, is inside of here. Now, we have basically the wiper cloth, which, if you can probably see, every time that we do a single pass over our printed surface, we're actually wiping our print heads on the right-hand side of the printer. So not only when we launch a print are we actually cleaning the print heads before the print is launched while the curing bays are warming up to temperature, but at the same time as printing, we're continuously wiping and maintaining those print heads all the time. On the opposite end of the printer, we have a foam pad that is allowing us to drop one droplet of ink onto the surface, onto this foam pad. So we are actually wiping and micro-purging as we're printing. So this is, as I said, it's continuously maintaining our print head quality even as we're printing. I said there's a third part of the maintenance, and that's actually inside of the carriage. There are two towers that contain two filtration systems, which is basically collecting any of the aerosol ink that is going to be misplaced because of the turbulence of the carriage itself. Okay, so that basically is our three consumables. I'm just waiting for the orange light to turn on, which is going to allow me to load the next board. I'm going to move over there right now, so you can see basically my loading area. Okay, there we are. The orange light is on. So the quicker I get this board into the machine, basically means the quicker I can start printing again. So I've just positioned my board in situ. I'm going to press start. You can see the light that was on is now flashing. The alignment bar has risen, and now my board is entering into the machine. Like I said, the quicker that you do this, if I have someone just feeding the machine, the distance is around about 15 centimeters in total that you can have between boards and boards. Okay, you may notice to start off the second job in the queue, I press the button on the top of the printer here. I could also press the foot pedal is on the floor if I have my hands occupied by a very large board, if I needed to do that. Or also on the screen, I can tell on the screen to start the process as well. Okay, so that's now loading into the board. Hopefully we can see a picture-in-picture to see the distance in between the first board and the second board inside of the machine itself. Okay, so hopefully we can get the shot in there as that's doing that. There we go. You can see the first board has just passed, the second board is entering. Okay, so that shows that we have a continuous productivity on this machine. Now, like I said, this is two boards printing at the same speeds, which is a 4-pass at 90% of ink. This is running about 62 meters squared per hour. Okay, and that is based on the width of the machine. Obviously, you notice that the carriage is going from one end of the printer to the other. So if I'm going to print any smaller sheets or smaller boards or maybe even smaller vinyl, I would have to consider to fill that bed to get those speeds that I'm talking about. So after this is printed, I'm going to be talking about I'm going to be loading rather, some foam PVC boards, 3 up. They're going to be running at a 6-pass. And then after that, I'm going to print on a black foam PVC boards with white only. So you can see that, as we've been talking about them before, that nice high resolution, very bright white. Okay. So this first board is coming off. At the moment, I'm actually using, because this is a corrugated cardboard, I'm actually using what we have as an accessory called the edge holders. When this process is finished, I will remove them and I'll explain briefly about those edge holders. Now, the edge holders, what they're actually helping to do is if we have any media, like corrugated cardboard can tend to do, to deform or maybe undulate before it goes into the machine, we want to keep that surface flat on the bed, on the vacuum bed, so it doesn't knock onto the printhead carriage and cause a crash. Okay, so these skis, or edge guards as we call them, is allowing that this media is flat on the surface and I can send my printhead carriage over the print zone without any worries whatsoever. Okay, so the first board is out. I'm just going to move this away. Well, in fact, before I move it away, let me just show you one thing that we were talking about previously. Because of the flexibility of our inks, this allows me to, straight after printing, able to bend this cardboard. If I can just get a nice close-up there we go. You can see that the edge of that cardboard has no cracking whatsoever. I'll just bend that forward so you can see that without the reflection. Let's do a reflection there. You can see absolutely no cracking whatsoever, and it allows me to form this board in any shape I want to without having the issues that sometimes get risen with UV inks, because it's a harder ink and it's on top of the surface, whereas our inks, they're flexible because of the latex polymers inside and allow us to have this flexibility for car wrapping and boxes. I actually have an example of this box that I can show you. If you give me a second to put this away. There we are. Hopefully that'll stay there. So this is as they say, here's one I made earlier. This is the same box that we have there. This has been here for a while, so there is a bit of scratching on there, but I'd like to pinpoint this surface over here. This has been formed about 2 years ago, I think now. And you can see that again, if I can take it off the reflection, hopefully, the reflection of the lights, you can see that there's absolutely no cracking on this double bend that we have on the cardboard here. So really, really flexible inks, allowing great versatility on media such as this corrugated cardboard. Okay, the second board is coming off. Okay, there, we do have a roller bar on the front of the machine. If I see that the board is, because of the curing, is starting to curl up, I can certainly drop this down so it stays flatter on the outside surface. Well, as we're doing that, let me show you a couple of samples that we have to basically emphasize what we were talking about previously. So we can print on a variety of different surfaces. Okay, let me just bring these into the camera shot. As we mentioned previously, we can print on wood. With the thin layer of ink that we can put down, we actually grab the properties of the wood. So if this piece of wood had some grain, which it doesn't have much of, I'm afraid, you'd be able to see that grain through the ink itself. So you can have that kind of natural effect when it comes to printing on wood surfaces. And like I said, because it's such a thin layer, we don't have any raised ink. And again, what we mentioned previously, when we go to route these, there's no chipping, there's no cracking, because the ink is very, very flexible. We also mentioned previously about printing on mirrored surfaces. This is printing white only on a mirrored surface. I'm going to shine it in the other direction so you don't see yourselves. And we have no issues on printing this, simply because if we, and I've experienced this before, if I print this on a UV machine, because of the light of the UV lamps that usually are in the carriage, the bounce back usually gives you the curing on the print heads, which we don't have this issue because this is a water-based ink that is using temperature to cure instead of light. And also, as we mentioned, the aluminium composite panels. This is a good example of an aluminium composite panel that is printed with white just underneath the surfer lady over here. And on the water in the background, there is no white. So you get that reflective property of the media coming through that color blue. That you can see it just there as I'm moving the panel, but not through the woman, because she has that white opacity underneath and allowing us to block that out. So this is where it comes into its own. That very thin layer of ink that we're putting down really shows through on one of these metal surfaces. Now, it is a thin layer of ink simply because we put 100% of ink down, but we evaporated 70% of that, which is water. So that's why we end up with this very thin surface with no banding in that sense. Okay. So my second board has finally exited the machine. I'll just show you the quality of these ones. Okay, so this, like I said, was printed at a 4-pass with 90% of ink. Any kind of panel like this that has a lot of vibrant colors and a lot of information, we can certainly reduce this down maybe even to a 3-pass. If we were printing solid surfaces, I would thoroughly recommend maybe a 4-pass, but at 62 meters squared for a 4-pass, I think you can agree it's a very fast, productive, high quality, high saturation on these prints that we're seeing right now. Okay, so let me just pop this to one side and I shall start to load the next medias. Okay. Okay, you may notice in the background that you see the carriage is moving. Like I said, before the print cycle, before the print is launched, as we're heating up the curing bays, we go for a cleaning cycle. And then after obviously during as well, you've seen it as well, we clean the print heads. And also after the print cycle, we go for a print head clean. So we're overemphasizing the print head clean to make sure that we have that continuous quality and resolution through those nozzles. Okay, so let me position myself onto the other side of the printer and let's load the next sheets into it. First thing I want to do is obviously I want to remove what I mentioned previously were the edge holders, and I just need to basically tell the printer to raise the carriage to the highest point. Now, you may or may not see, but under there, the whole carriage itself is raising, so it allows me to remove these edge holders. We also have another part of the installation, which are these plastic wedges, which you need because you have to have that very slight distance in between the belt and the actual alignment bar, so you can allow the edge holders to be in place. Okay, so that's that one. I'm just going to remove the other one from the other side. Now that I've done that, I just want to very quickly run to the front of the printer because I just need to release the edge holders from the front. So it's just two rubber hooks on here, which if I raise, they come off the holdings that we have at the front of the printer. Just going to lift the other one off and that's it. So now I'll return to the back. Sorry to be running around the printer itself, but this is what I need to do. And at the back, I'm just going to remove the edge holder like so. Okay, it just comes straight out of the machine, folds back onto itself, nice and neat, you put away. Now, let me briefly show you. The edge holder itself does have this lip, which is where the media goes underneath. And we also, part of in the box itself, we have some shims, which allow you to raise the height of this according to the thickness of the media that you're actually going to put into the machine. Okay, so that's the edge holder we have that's just come out of the machine. I'm just going to take away the second one. Put that in place. Okay, I'm going to remove this extension table. The printer itself comes with the table that's in front. We have extension tables if you're going to be printing maybe with some larger boards, maybe 1550 by 3.5 meter boards, which take a lot more distance. You may need to consider investing in the extension table. So now I've removed the edge holders. I'm just going to tell the machine to lower itself to the printing level, which it will now do. The whole carriage and the whole curing area, curing bay, all moves up and down. You can hear the beep probably from the back of my microphone that is basically telling you that the machine is moving. Let's not have any arms in place. We do have sensors there, so if you do put an arm in, then it's going to stop. It's not going to drop on your arm and cause you any pain. Okay, so once that's in position, you can see it's lowering quite quickly. I'll be able to load the next boards. Let me get the next sheets ready. Like I said at the beginning, some 3mm foam PVC whiteboards, and I'm going to be printing on a 4-pass with 90% again. So let me go into the loading screen, which is over here. I'm going to choose the media that I want to put on, which is a foam PVC. And I have all the parameters set, so I'm just going to press load. The only thing I'm going to do is just set these pins, which allow me to put in position my other boards. So if I'm printing multiple copies, this position will be helped by these pins that I have now lowered. Okay, I've got my boards ready. There we go. As soon as the light comes on, it's basically an indication that the machine is ready to load. So I'm just going to put my boards into the zero position of these. The zero position is at the black bar at the back, which if you are going to scan the media, this will also read the thickness of the media. So I'm just going to press feed. Because I have the parameters already inbuilt into the machine, you'll see that the black bar will raise, the boards will enter into the machine, and it'll be ready to go straight away without having to scan the media or see the thickness or whereabouts the position is. Now, if I was to do that, you would notice that the carriage would go across the media after it's fed in a bit, and on the return journey, it'll scan the bed looking for the white points of the media to understand exactly how wide each sheet is and exactly where the position of those boards will be on the belt. Okay, so now I have green ticks. It is ready to go. I'll press done. So I'm going to drag in, by using the category, the 3 files I want to print. I have those nicely positioned now. I'm also going to add the black foam PVC 2 whiteboards to the queue. Now this allows me to have tabs. I'm just going to do it again to make sure it's loaded into the machine. There we go. So now I've generated another tab, which is now my blackboards. The only thing it's telling me now I need to do is to set the thickness of this. So if I go into configure, here I can set the thickness, which I know is going to be 3mm as well. I press OK and done. So now this is chainable. So basically, as this is printing and curing, because this is a different speed, it'll have to cure first because of the speeds. It allows me to put the next boards in without the machine shutting down or cooling down at any point in time. So now these boards are ready. I'm going to press print. The warning that comes up is basically telling me that I am not using white ink at the moment on these images, but my white print heads are inside the machine. This warning is basically saying if you're not going to be printing with white over an extended period of time, then please remember to remove those. Our print heads are removable by the operator, which makes it consumable. And if I go to the other side of the printer, we can show you that white recirculation chamber.
Daniel, hi, it's Jane.
So as I mentioned, yes.
Yeah, can you hear
Yes,
me
I do.
okay? It's just we've got a lot of questions and I'm aware people have put a lot of time into putting the questions in. Are you okay if I ask you a couple of questions while the machine's printing?
By all means, by all means.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt, surprise, surprise. One of the questions was about the white ink and the rotation chamber, whether you've had any challenges with it or whether it's worked perfectly for you.
Let me show you that right now. So the rotation chamber is basically this box that's inside of here, right next to the wiper cloth, and we can have these two metal boxes. Inside of them, currently, we have dummy print heads. Now, these dummy print heads are put into the machine where we're not using the white print heads, simply because of this sensor on the front there. Oops, I'm dropping white ink all over the place. And that sensor is basically relaying back to the machine that we need to continue the white circulation of the ink cartridges. So if I was to remove the white print heads themselves, I would put them into this box. Like I said, there's two of them in total. I would close the box and they would go into this rotation chamber, which is situated just next to the cleaning maintenance cloth over here. Once I've inserted both the print heads and I've put the dummy ones into the machine, what I actually need to do is press this button that's next to the rotation chamber. If we can get a small close-up of that one, hopefully. There we are. So that's the rotation chamber. I press the button underneath, and basically what that does, it rotates every 20 minutes. There we go. So it started to spin. And that allows the continuous movement with the print heads not being into the machine themselves or wasting any ink when we do our cleaning. It allows it to be stored and have that continuous circulation or movement in the print heads without having to waste a single droplet of ink, even though I've dropped some on the floor. No, and in terms of issues, I've not found any issues whatsoever in this. In fact, if I compare it to some of the technologies I've used in the past, I can say this is probably one of the most economical versions, because I'm not purging the white when they're in the print heads themselves, in the carriage itself, and it keeps that fluidity. And I can say the only thing that may need to be have done before bringing the white print heads back in is maybe with a soft cloth and some distilled water, we just wipe them to get any crustation that may have built up on the surface. But as soon as you take that off and put them in, within 5 minutes you're up and running with your white inks after it does its check and it's clean.
So there's another question about does the carriage, so the question was, does the carriage always have to move the full width of the machine regardless of the width of the loaded board? So does the head have to travel the full 2.5 meters on every job?
Yes, it does. This is basically taken from our roll-to-roll machines that in order to have the complete maintenance cycle, we have to go over the purge cloth on the other side and the wiper cloth on this side. It's exactly the same technology we have in the roll-to-roll. It just makes sure that we are continuously maintaining those print heads. So as I said previously, if you're going to be printing smaller jobs, because we have the intelligent vacuum system, I would load them that they actually fill the bed themselves to gain those speeds, like I was saying before. Currently, this is printing at 6 pass with 100% of ink, and it's around about 43 square meters an hour, okay? You can see I put those 3 boards up to make sure I can benefit from those speeds.
And you can have different
just
images
before
on
we go
each
to
of
the
the
next
boards,
question.
couldn't you? Sorry, Daniel, I'll shut
Exactly,
up.
exactly. You're not restricted at all. This is true. You can continue. I just have the orange light because the machine is so productive. It's asking me to feed the next boards into the machine.
So maybe I could ask Andy then a couple of questions that are specific to you, I think, Andy.
Of course.
Somebody's been asking whether you've had any experience with synthetic leather. Have you printed on synthetic leather at all?
The synthetic leather, as I understand it, is we've actually printed synthetic leather before on other latex, successfully on other latex technologies. So I know we've printed it on our 3600 and our 570. It's PVC based normally, so I see no issue with that. I couldn't say for sure we printed it on the R series, but I know we've used other latex ink technology to achieve that, and it's had some really good results. It's very robust. I seem to remember some years ago doing a Chesterfield style sofa in synthetic leather with a Union Jack print on it. I may even have some imagery of that from years gone by. But yeah, it's synthetic leather printing on the R series or any latex technology shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, and somebody came back to the dye bond. I think you maybe covered it actually. They said they'd heard there were some issues on printing dye bond on the R series. I just wondered if you could give your experience.
Yeah, initially I wouldn't say there were issues, but the technology is I've said this to a couple of people now, that the technology, what you end up with as in a printed panel, looks very much like the end result of a UV printer, but the technology is different. So there's been a bit of time where we've spent time using the portfolio of products that we have and see which one works best with the R series. Direct to substrate latex printing, obviously, we've had the machine a year and we've learned an awful lot, shared that with HP. But yes, I wouldn't say we've had issues, but some products, as in with solvent printing or UV printing or latex printing, some products perform better than others. And if you one useful resource is the list of products that HP Barcelona have tested. They publish this, and it's in the machine, and they're all products that you'd recognise. So the multi-panel example earlier, the panel that we tested originally was perfectly marketable, but we've now got an improved version of it. So it's even more robust and now offers a recycling option. So I've not had any issues, printing any particular product that I haven't experienced with UV printing, if I'm honest.
So if I may here, Jane, let me add one thing. So as Andy was saying at the beginning, is obviously we have better or worse performance with different medias, and it's a matter of the treatment that they have in the surface. This has been optimized for UV printing since it was the traditional way of printing. Right now, we are starting with multi-panel, with red bond, with 3A to create new surface treatments for these boards to work perfectly with latex. This is what we are doing with Andy on multi-panel. Okay, helping. Thank you.
Okay, so just had the foam PVC boards come out. This is the 6-pass 110. And you can see that we have very punchy reds. Our blacks stay black at even very high speeds, like 3 passes as well. This is a great leap in terms of color gamut on rigid medias as well. It really gives us that edge. Because of that 1200 DPI resolution as well, our gradients are smooth. There is no banding as you may get in some blacks at higher speeds on UV because of the interpass position, which you may have to go unidirection, which you don't need to do on this printer because we're evaporating that 70% of ink. Let me just, now that the black foam PVC boards are coming through the machine, maybe you can get a window of the white that's printing at the moment. Let me just show you some densities of white that we can actually print on the printer. So there are 4 different densities currently that we can print at. The lowest amount of ink of white we can put down in one hit is 60%, which is represented by the face over here. The second one is 100% of white, which is the second face you can see here. The third one is printed at 160% of white. And the last one is the most amount of white that you can put down, which is 260% of white. So it really depends on the media you're going to print on, the surface you're going to print on, as to which of these opacities that you may or may not need. Not only can we print, this is printed on a spot white, which is printed in the white only. Not only can you print white only, but you can also print in 2 different types of modes with color. Various different types of modes with color. You can print, obviously, an underflood, which is printing the white underneath the color, so the white goes down and the color goes on top. Or if you're printing on a transparent media, let me go and grab one of those to show you an example. I can print the color with the white on the top of the surface. Now this is represented in this board I'm just bringing over now. So this is printed first, the color has gone down, and then the white has gone on top. Because this is a clear media, it allows us to view it through the media as such. And you can see that the white represents itself very well because of that very high resolution. It conforms to the edges, so I don't see any white bleeding through the high resolution color that we have on the inks as well. There are two other print modes that we have. When we talk about whites, we have the 3-layer mode, which I'm just going to bring to the camera right now. The 3-layer mode is printing color, then white, and then the color after that. You can say in this two different images we have represented here. We also have a 5-layer mode, which basically does the same, but adds a black blockout. So we have color, white, black as a blockout, white, and then color again. So you add that density. So if you could print different images on a clear surface at any moment in time. Okay. I'll show you an example again of the 3-layer mode that we have here on a clear self-adhesive vinyl. This is printing the same image on both sides. Excuse me, I don't have any nails. Perfect time to have cut my nails. Excellent.
See, this is when you miss people like me being in your demo centre, Daniel. I could do it for you.
Yes, yes, there we go. Sorry about that, Jay. Yeah, but I do miss everyone coming here and being here in the flesh. So there we go. So there's a clear self-adhesive vinyl with the same image on the other side. That's the white in between that. You can see that white is represented around the edge of that pizza there. Okay, so these applications are very useful when you're doing window displays and stuff like that. Okay. So the white is coming out of the printer right now. The white on the black foam PVCs was printing at a 7-pass with 100% of white, and that's around about 36 meters squared per hour. Okay. I can take this board out and show you the white representation. So here we have. I basically chose these images because we can show the solidity of the white on this with 100% of white. Also, the high resolution we can attain through the image here of the guy with the hair going in front of his face. So, like was mentioned previously, because we are using 1,200 DPIs natively, our photo image quality using white only is comparable with our color inks our color print heads that we have inside as well. Also, another good representation is this one over here. Again, showing you that high resolution through the skin of the hands and those rocks that we see on the other side. You see, super high res.
That's great, Daniel. I just wanted to let everybody know we've got a lot of questions, and what we will
Excellent.
do, this is being recorded, so the people that are on the webinar will have access to the recording afterwards. And we've taken a note of all the questions, so if we don't have time to go through them live, we will come back to everybody that's asked the questions.
Okay, fantastic. Let me just quickly show you this before we move on to. Sorry,
Daniel.
Okay, this is actually printed on a synthetic leather. We have done various testings here in the demo center. This is on a PVC-based synthetic leather, which works absolutely fantastic. You have that flex in the media, which allows the ink to flex with it. We've also tested on real leather as well, and we've had some very high-end fashion companies basically demanding this technology because of how good the resolution, the color gamut, and the flexibility is of printing on different surfaces. Okay, so yes, we can in that respect. Okay, so let me just go again quickly before the next questions are asked. To the back of the printer, I'm going to show you loading flexible media. Okay, so let's load a roll of vinyl.
So Maria, maybe while Daniel's loading the vinyl, could you answer the questions? There were some about is the optimizer water-based, was about printhead life. There were a few other questions that you were prepared to answer. Could you take them now while Daniel does this?
I can completely. I think it's a good moment. So asking here if your optimizer is water-based ink. Yes, it is the same at the end. Okay, so all the inks are water-based inks. Regarding we had here, there is a question from, is there any chance to get the same print results in various print modes with the same profile and media in terms of colors? So here the question, I won't read all of it only because it's long and I prefer to explain. In latex, we have, it is true that in latex we can decide depending on how fast we are printing, how much ink we want to put. So going faster, normally, we can allow that by putting less ink, right? But there is a little bit of overlap where we can go faster and still maintain the ink. So the question here was like, I am printing at 8 pass 130% ink. Can I get the same color in 6 pass 120% of ink? Say, not with the 120, but there is the possibility of still printing at 6 pass at 130, or obviously reducing a little bit the 8 pass. So in between the print modes, there is a little overlap that we can play with density and speed. And finally, here I have a question. They're saying that with the 1500, they are experiencing variability of the printhead life. In some printheads, they are getting 72 liters of ink. On some other printheads, they are getting 15 liters, okay, consumption. So the question is, would this be, let's say, can we expect a better performance on the R series? At the end, my answer would be that we can expect the same performance. These are all latex printers. We have the same systems working there, like the heaters, the carriage moving, and all this at the end affects the printhead life. So as a rule of thumb, let's say, as the most you use, or the more you use the printhead, the more it will last. Okay, so if you are in a really productive environment, constantly using the printheads, they will last longer. Because at the end, if you have the printheads sometimes on the carriage without using a lot, which can be what happens with a white printhead, then you are not consuming as much, but you are making the printhead travel and can have crashes or so there is a risk on the system, right? So at the end, the answer is the same performance on the 1500s, and the more you use the printer, the longer the life will be of the printheads.
So yes, it's a production device that we expect to be used. So if you're using it and doing the maintenance, then the printhead should last. So Daniel, I know you're waiting, so we'll shut up now.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to explain briefly about this loading system, how unique it is. Because this is a vacuum belt, I have used other machines which have the similar vacuum belt, and loading flexible medias on a vacuum surface can be quite tricky, because if you don't get the alignment correct over a period of time, even that half a mil that could be on the loading that's slightly off skew over the length of the job, you'll see that the media will start to move over to one side. We have a unique system here, which we've upgraded since seeing the problems that can arise from this type of belt. We have a part of the belt which goes into a gully. So the first part is we want to stop the belt from moving from side to side. Also, we have a system when we load that basically allows for any kind of skew that's in place as the operator has loaded the media onto the surface of the belt to be eliminated. Now that basically means that as soon as I put the media on top and I press load, what the machine has done, it's finished its cycle, with the vacuum in place, it starts to move the belt forward, but it locks the spindle. So basically what it's trying to do is force the media, so it's pulling it straight through the machine. The media then gets advanced into the machine by about 1 meter, and then it does the same again, just to make sure those millimeters that are slightly off skew, make sure it represents a very straight run through the machine, which allows this machine, as Terry has mentioned previously, to be printed unattended. It allows it to load up in the night, and it can just be left and print without any worries of any crashes or skewing off to one side. We also have a secondary option. In total, there are 3 options to load. Obviously, you've seen the rigid media loading on the surface. You've now seen the flexible that is now loaded. We also have this system which is in place, which allows me to print maybe 1 or 2 copies off a roll. So I load the roll into these rollers with the table in situ, and that allows me to feed the media into the machine without having to go through the spindle over here itself. Sorry about that. So now I've got this ready. I'm just going to drag the file I want to print into the area and press print. And I'm not going to bother you anymore. Let's have the questions and answers. I'm going to go to the other side as this is warming up.
So one of the questions, Daniel, was, does the use of optimizer slow the print speeds or productivity of the machine? And I just want to answer one because I think somebody thought that the optimizer, or as they call it, a primer, is removed from the machine. The optimizer stays in the machine all the time and is used in different amounts dependent upon the type of print that you're doing. But in terms of, does it slow the machine down, Daniel, what would you say, or Maria?
I would say absolutely not. Because optimizer has to be apparent in all of latex technologies, all the speeds that we're getting it is irrelevant because it is part of the printing cycle. So no, it does not slow down the productivity of this machine. In fact, it enhances it because it makes adhering to surfaces that would have issues in UV that need priming. You need to do the priming of the medias beforehand. You don't need to in certain cases because we already have that inbuilt into this system.
And am I correct, Daniel, with the curing across the bed of the printer, the curing modules are only turned on for the width of the print. So if you're not using the whole bed of the machine, you're not going to use all the curing or heating modules. Is that correct?
That is exactly correct, Jane. Yes, it works in the same principle as our vacuum system. So dependent on the width of the media I'm going to load into the machine, number one, the vacuums will only ignite or be used to cover that surface. So we have maximum suction. The same way as we have the curing. Now the curing is modular. So there are 6 modules in the front of the printer. And again, as you've mentioned, Jane, dependent on the width of the media. So for example, this 1.3 width roll of SAV will only be using the 4 modules in the middle of the printer. They won't be using the side modules, so that saves on the energy and it saves on just wasting that hot air, so to speak, going onto the surface. So yes, it is modular and will be adjusted according to the media width that you load in the machine. Let me just emphasize apart from the curing, we actually have a drying system as well. So obviously if we put in 2 layers down, because this is a water-based ink, just in case any questions arise from this, if I was to put the second surface or the second layer of ink down directly without having any kind of curing on that first top layer, bottom layer rather, then because it's water-based, the inks will tend to mix together and look a bit, well, bad. So we need to dry that before. So inside of the printer, I don't know if you've noticed, just as the media is going into the print zone, we have some black ventilators. Now that is allowing us to blow some warm air over the surface of the printer, of the print area, print zone, to just slightly cure that first layer before we lay that second layer onto the surface itself. So that we have, all these can be adjusted, temperatures and airflow and air pressure, they can all be adjusted according to the media that you load into the machine.
Yeah, there was a quick question. I'm going to go to Andy with a couple of questions in a sec, but just one for you, Daniel. Can you explain the 5-layer printing? Does the board go backwards and forwards, or are we printing 5 layers at a time?
No, we are printing 5 layers at the same time. So we don't have to worry about positioning.
I did know the answer myself, but I thought I should throw it at you. Sorry, I appreciate everybody staying on so long, and I know we had a bit of a time pressure, but there was a couple of ones for Andy, because obviously he is a person who's invested in the technology. Now, it was about fabric and frame systems. Now, I don't know whether you, Andy, would use the R series for printing on fabrics because you've got roll-to-roll printers, but if you do, have you found any difference between printing and then handling and moving the printed fabric compared to UV?
We would normally a go-to machine for printing tension frame fabrics, which we do a lot of, would be a 36 hour. We did test the the standard material that we use for tension frames on the R series and got exactly the same result. When I say tested it, we tested it, we printed it, we checked you know, how stable the ink was when it was cured, and we always also stitched the silicone edge on just to check that it did perform exactly the same. So it's entirely possible, and we've tested it and achieved perfectly good results with printing fabrics on the R series. But as I say, we tend to use our 3600 as our go-to machine for printing fabrics. Could I just make one point, whilst we've got that shot there of Daniel and the R series, and it was a really big decision-making factor for us when we bought the machine last year. Everyone who's on this this webinar, the one thing that's missing off that machine, and it was a huge decision maker for us, there's no extraction on it. You don't need any extraction. So if you look at our UV printer, yeah, it's got huge vents that extract all the toxins that are produced and the unpleasant acrid odor that you get from UV printing. The staff that we have, that we consulted and with when we were deciding on which machine to invest in, that this was a real key element for their decision. They had a decision between a couple of machines. One was UV and this latex printer, and it very much swayed their decision as to which one they wanted to go for. Was the lack of acrid odor that came from the R series. You've got to remember, the only byproducts going into the atmosphere is water. So it's a water-based machine, and the dryers are removing the water from the ink. And so we run that machine. There's no additional extraction, there's no additional expense, and there's no unpleasant odor in the factory when we're printing, particularly if you're printing fabrics on UV. When you print fabrics on UV, you always get a strong unpleasant odor in the factory. And that's now gone as we've moved into printing that on latex. It's the same for the 570s that we have, the 3600s that we have. There's no additional extraction required, which makes for a much nicer working environment. I just wanted to make that point.
I appreciate it. It's a big thing. So sustainability is a big thing, obviously, from the HP perspective. A quick question on, I don't know whether you've been printing on glass. I know you mentioned dye bond earlier, Andy. People are asking, are you using any kind of primer before you're printing on those types of substrates?
No, if we're printing on glass, it tends to be already in situ. We've not printed directly to glass in the factory. We print very often to acrylics. We print on a regular basis, almost daily, to PETG. And we've had no issues with adhesion on any of those materials. If we're printing on glass in situ, i.e. if we're doing an architectural type design job in an office, particularly around office partitions, we tend to print that on a polyester window film, optically clear polyester window film. But yeah, clear materials like acrylics and PETG and stuff like that, we've had no issues with adhesion. But I can't comment directly on glass.
So we've got a question about printing white and the colours with different print configurations to optimize time. So I'm guessing what that means is, can you print a colour job and then a white job and then a colour job? Yeah, you can. The demonstration that we saw earlier from Daniel, where you take the white ink heads out, that's only for storage. We don't remove the white ink heads on a daily basis. If we're using white ink on Monday and we're using white ink on Tuesday, we won't take the white ink heads out in between jobs. We won't even take them out overnight. It's important to emphasize as well that, again, we've had UV printers with white ink, and we've got a UV printer with white ink, and that solution of taking the print heads out and putting them into storage, if you know, for example, over the weekend you're not going to use the machine, or if you've got a particularly large job where it's not going to require white ink, and we'll store the cartridges at that point. But it's a lot less effort to remove those heads and store them than it is to get the white heads back on a UV machine. If we haven't used our UV machine for several days or a week or so, there's quite a lot of effort goes into trying to get those white heads back and get all those nozzles firing again. This solution that we found with the R series, it looks different initially, but we found it to be much more sustainable and a lot more user friendly, actually. No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Thank you. Mind just my code then. Apologies.
Can I just?
I'm just very aware.
Sorry, can I
we've
just
only got
quickly
5
emphasise that? Okay, sorry, very, very quickly. In terms of keeping the nozzles in situ, we have a nozzle compensation system as well. About 20 to 30% of the printhead is not actually used. So when we do what's called a check and clean, which is one button press in the morning, we're checking by injecting nozzles through an infrared surface, and then we're seeing that any of them that may be blocked or non-used. Then we'll replace them automatically with the ones that we're not using normally on the printhead. So after this check and clean, we're making sure again that those printheads are working 100% all the time and compensating those failed nozzles, so you don't see any kind of pinstriping in the print production as you start the production for the day. Sorry, just wanted to add that one.
No, brilliant. Thank you, Daniel. Just in case the Zoom actually cuts us off, I just really want to say thank you to Andy. It really helps to talk to somebody who uses a printer in real life as opposed to us as HP. Obviously, Mireia and Terry and Daniel, thanks very much for everything that you've gone through. Any questions we haven't got to, we will come back to. We'll either come back to the team in the country where you are, because we've got a recording of this. As I said, everybody who's been on the webinar will have access to the recording. Anybody who missed it, they can come and ask us if they weren't able to attend, then we will get the recording for them. As a follow-up, obviously get in touch with your partner or the person that you deal with at HP if there's any other queries that you didn't want to ask during the presentation. And as you can see, Daniel does a very good remote demonstration, and we do have the option for people to have a one-to-one remote demonstration where they can print their materials, their images in our demonstration centre in Barcelona. So yeah, just really thank everybody for staying with us for so long and all your input, and I hope you found it useful.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for attending.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks, Andy.
Cheers.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.